Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Novia McLaren and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in Connecticut. The name of my practice is My Story Counseling. It has been a while since I've made a video. I think it's been almost a year. Time flies when you're having fun, right? Things have been very busy in a good way, so I had to kind of scale back on making these videos. They do come with a lot of time in terms of like editing and prepping, and me just kind of getting comfortable being behind or in front of the camera. So I was inspired today. It is beautiful summer day here in Connecticut. It's July 10th 2023, and I have been working with a lot of clients who are dealing with narcissistic parents. So this is my niche. I talk a lot about narcissistic personality disorder, so I would like to make a video of jumping more in detail on anyone who is struggling or dealing with a narcissistic parent, whether it's a mother or a father. I do come across a lot of mothers and daughters. There's also sons and fathers, but I might go more specifically today in mothers and daughters. So a daughter, if you're in this situation dealing with a narcissistic mother, it could be a lot of conflict in terms of, do I, walk away from this relationship? Your mother is supposed to be your best friend. So your mother is someone that's supposed to be guiding you, supporting you, loving you, and nurturing, and somebody that you can trust. You can feel safe, somebody that's going to build up your confidence and be your biggest cheerleader. So you might be grappling with the idea of giving up on the hope of having those qualities ever manifest in a narcissistic mother. So it's perfectly normal to feel a lot of guilt when you start learning that those are your only options when dealing with a difficult parent. So the signs of a narcissistic mother or parent is someone who is very competitive with you. They're very demeaning of you. They're very minimizing of you. They're invalidating of your feelings. It's someone who creates arguments. It's very combative. They rarely or seldom apologize or take accountability for any wrongdoings. Someone that's projecting and blaming and blame shifting, and they're usually the victim. If you come to them about something that's bothering you, they'll turn it around quickly to what's bothering them about you, and a lot of gaslighting, a lot of chaos and crazy making. So if you find yourself having to deal with a parent like that, they definitely suffer or struggle with personality disorder. Further information, you can check out my other videos from last year, part 1, part 2, and part 3. Go in detail into what this disorder really is, because it's very complex, and it's a spectrum disorder, I would say, in terms of the severity and the levels. But usually most of the characteristics look the same in someone like that. It's usually a few traits that mimic or matches the other person with the same disorder, but they do come across in a different variety of different ways and play out in different contexts depending on the relationship, which is why specifically I'm talking about parents. Growing up, narcissistic parents can do a good job of really molding and sculpting how they want the child to view them, how they want the child to feel about themselves. So it's really hard to shed those layers as you get older and you're coming out of the fog and realizing that you've been duped your whole life, that my parent may have never really had good intentions for me to begin with. That's really hard to grapple with an adult child, and especially if you're your core being, you can't even understand someone doing that, because if you had a child, you can't even fathom doing something so sinister from the onset of their existence. So it's really hard for someone to come out of that and really understand that they have to start looking at their parents as separate beings from the parent that you wish they were, you wish they should have been or could have been, to the personality complex, to their pathology, really looking at them for who they really are, which are they're really complex beings, traumatized beings who are incapable of having empathy, who are incapable of being authentic and genuine in any of their interactions or their intentions, because their main purpose is to protect their ego state and to protect the fragility of their own trauma that they've probably been through, and they're masking with these behaviors. So it's, manifested itself so gravely that they can't go back, they can't even go backwards, because this is now who they've created themselves to being, and by any means necessary, even their own children, they cannot learn how to empathize with their own children. They cannot learn how to take accountability for the growth of their own children and for the relationship. It's all about survival for them. So it's really hard for a child, an adult child, to be able to see that, because that would mean devastation in some ways. And that's why what I work on with clients is helping them learn to grieve, going through the 5 stages of grief, the grief process of that parent that they wish they had, the parent that they should have had, the parent that they deserve, and going through the stages of grief, which, and some of you guys know, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, DABDA, the acronym, so first you were in denial. You were in denial that your parent is who they are, because you're holding on to the hope that they can change or be better for you or for themselves, right? And so eventually you're coming away from that. So once you're realizing that, hey, they're not able, you're going to go through a stage of anger. You're going to be angry at the situation, your circumstance. You're going to be angry for the younger parts of yourself that deserve better, the parts of yourself that wasn't able to speak up for themselves. Just anger, right? Which is perfectly normal. And then bargaining. And you can go through these stages in different phases. It doesn't have to be in the order, but bargaining, you're going to try to work something out with the parent. Sometimes we try family therapy with the parents. You may have 1 or 2 good sessions, but innately it goes backwards, because that person, again, is unable to take accountability and responsibility. They have a fragile ego state, and their patterns of behaviors are so ingrained in them. It's really hard unless they're doing their own work, and unless they're really gaining insight and awareness, and having some sort of moral compass, some sort of remorse per se. And usually it's pretty hard, because if you're so defensive, a lot of things can be barriers to that happening for the narcissistic person. So, family therapy could be a bargaining tactic. You'll be pleading, crying, just trying to find any other way versus it being the reality. And then eventually the person will move to depression, which is the other acronym, D. You're sad, you're mourning the loss of the parent, you're mourning the loss of the relationship that you wish you had, you're mourning the loss of your childhood that you deserved. That's where, the therapist will come in, myself or anyone you're working with. And then the last stage would be acceptance, which is the goal for treatment, is to get to acceptance that your narcissistic parent is who they are because of who they are, whatever circumstances, whatever traumas they've been through, it's just who they are, and recognizing your boundaries, that you're not going to tolerate it anymore, you're not going to put up with it anymore, you're going to create distance, emotional distance. You're going to be setting clear, firm boundaries. You're going to have a no tolerance attitude with dealing with any of their toxic projections or their own toxic traits or the relationship patterns. You're going to take a different position in the family. Usually clients who come to see me are usually identified in marriage and family therapy as a scapegoat, where in a toxic family dynamic, they choose one person to be the scapegoat, the one that they project all their problems onto, the one that carries the family's symptoms and dysfunction around with them. So learning to kind of shed that and coming into your own identity, as well as having clear and firm boundaries, is definitely something that I work on. Empowering yourself, validating your feelings, and redefining yourself and identifying yourself outside of the noise and outside of everyone else's projections onto you from that, dysfunctional relationship with the parents or the family as a whole. So getting to acceptance is very liberating for a client, but they definitely have to do a lot of hard work before then, because everyone deserves to have a healthy, happy parent in their life. Everyone deserves to have a healthy relationship with the parent that brought them into this world. But sometimes, unfortunately, that's not the case. As someone with narcissistic personality, the chances are very slim of them ever recovering from those maladaptive coping mechanisms, which is what it is. They develop that over time based on their own trauma. So again, going back to the old videos can help break down a lot of the reasons why someone turns out like this. So I mentioned, trauma affects the brain two ways, where you develop, a fragile ego state. You put up a lot of defenses. I'm gonna hurt you before you get me. I'm in a state of survival. I'm in a state of fight or flight. And their ability to have empathy gets turned off, and it's really everything else is self-serving for them based on their trauma. That's how they see the world. Versus someone else who's been through trauma. They are more empathic. They have more empathy. They want to save the world. They would never want to cause harm to anyone. They take the brunt of other people's dysfunction. They are people pleasers. They want to appease to everyone, and don't really have a strong sense of self. So those types of people are very good for narcissistic people to take advantage of. So the goal of therapy and mental health is really finding a balance and a gray way of thinking. And when you overcome your own traumas, finding that gray area and not being extreme where you're all or nothing. So the balance there, but the beauty of it is an empath, which is the latter that I explained. An empath who has been through trauma, they have compassion, they have self-awareness, so they're able to get better. Versus a narcissist, they don't want to hear it, they don't believe they have a problem, they don't believe in counseling, they don't believe in being vulnerable, they don't believe in taking accountability, so they stay stuck and stagnant. So which is why someone has to kind of grieve the loss of that relationship, because that person is staying stagnant and they have to move forward and choose themselves. So very complex mental health disorder here. That's why there's so many different layers to it. So I'm happy I was able to find time today to come to you guys and talk a little bit more about it. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what other areas you guys would like to learn more about when it comes to working with or dealing with someone with this disorder, or any other topics. Love and light. Be safe. Be well.